Hey guys, it's Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. Here we talk about all things Disney as well as how to plan your Walt Disney World vacation. So if that interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. Alrighty guys, so today we are going to talk about budgeting for Disney. Now I've made a video like this before, so if you haven't checked that out, I will put the link of that above. But today we are actually going to start a new series that is going to be diving a little bit deeper into all of the different parts of budgeting for your Disney vacation. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. Okay, and so today's video, the thing that we are going to be breaking down is traveling fees, airline fees, driving, all of that fun stuff. All right, so to start with this, we're going to first determine how are we getting to Disney World? Are we driving? Are we flying? Train, bus, whatever. Mainly, we're just going to talk about driving and flying today. So everybody's going to have this expense one way or another. Personally, we live in Kansas. That's pretty far to drive, so we will probably never drive there because I hate car rides. So for us, honestly, we will probably always fly, so that is definitely what I know the most about. Not saying that you couldn't drive there, I don't like long car rides. But speaking of flying, my favorite way to book flights is through the Hopper app, which again, I've talked about this before, so if you need to check out my video for that, I will also link that above. But this app is so amazing. Literally, I love that I can just plug in my dates and it will shop all different types of flights. And it'll just notify me when my flights, prices are the lowest. I do still check every now and again, but I don't have to constantly be watching to try and get the best deal, because Hopper will do that basically for me. This is also a really important category to budget, because this is going to be one of the first things that you are going to be purchasing. Of course, after your deposit for your room, but that typically is only a few $100s depending on where you're staying, and we will talk about that more in the next video. But with flights, usually you have to be ready at a moment's notice to be able to get the best deal on those flights. What I encourage people to do is get on Hopper or whatever type of thing that they like to use and kind of guesstimate about how much it will be. So I know for Hopper, it will tell you what the lowest estimated price will be. We don't ever use that number for our budgeting, because 9 times out of 10, we may not exactly hit that number, because even though they'll say, oh, this is the cheapest flight, we may not book that cheapest flight because we might be trying to get certain times for our flights and things like that. So we would like to get kind of a good range and almost kind of over buffer just a little bit on how much we think flights are going to be. Once we have that number, we try to save up for that as quick as possible, so that way when those prices do get released, we are able to jump on that right away and not have to stress about oh no, I ain't got enough money to buy my plane tickets. And then you spend more money. So it's good to try and get that money as soon as you possibly can. If you're flying, you need to have your airline tickets, but then you also need to leave a line item, or however you do your budget, for luggage. So luggage fees, some airlines have them, some don't. Some let you have carry-on, some don't. You just need to make sure that you are planning accordingly to know that you may have some sort of luggage fee. So now on the flip side, if you are somebody that is driving, gas expenses, of course you're gonna have that. And it's gonna be really hard to give you an exact number on this, just because everybody's car is different and everybody's car has different mileage. And so gas is gonna cost you different, and depending on where you live, there's a lot of factors there, but you know your car, you know how much it takes to fill it up, use your judgment. So kind of like how we had our luggage fees with the airlines, you need to have your toll fees line item with if you are driving. So if you are driving long distances, you will probably have some toll fees at some point in your trip. Usually that's not going to be very much, but it's just something you need to think about of, oh yeah, I probably need to have a little bit of money for that. Usually a little bit of cash if you can. I know a lot of them take cards now, but you never know. It's good to be prepared. And the last thing too to think about with driving is sometimes this can take more than a day depending on where you live to get to Disney. And if that's the case, you do need to make sure you plan a little bit for any lodging on your way there. Now we are going to talk a little bit more about this again in the next video when we talk about resorts and lodging, but it is just something to be thinking about as you're starting to get your travel expenses going. And for both of these, whether you're flying or driving, you do need to also budget for your travel day meals. Personally, we like to budget those meals separately just because we are going to be eating like on the road or at home, or we'll be bringing snacks, or it's just kind of a little different. So that's always a great tip too. Bring your own snacks so you can save a little bit of money there for your traveling time. That way when you get to Disney, you have a little more money to actually spend on the food there. But definitely make sure you do have some cash or money in your account or whatever, so that way you can buy some food as you're going. So this is a really good opportunity to save money on your trip by not eating at expensive restaurants. Like I said, bring some snacks with you, or if you are eating out, maybe try to eat, I know it's not the greatest, but maybe try to eat out at some fast food restaurants or just some cheaper restaurants. That way you're not blowing all of your money before you even get to Orlando. Those are kind of the big ones as far as it goes with traveling to Disney. Now, when you're actually there are some other travel expenses that you might need to consider depending on how you're getting around. And the biggest one with that is going to be rental cars. Not everybody does this, but I notice a lot of times people who maybe are staying off property, or maybe they just have a bigger family that they are needing to shuttle around, and for them it's easier to drive, you may have the rental car fees. So as far as pricing for those, don't hate me, I've never actually rented a car before so I don't really know a whole lot about it, but I'm sure that you can find a lot of information more about specifically renting cars. I know that there are several rental properties around the Orlando area that are very easy to work with. I think there's some that are even on or really close to Disney property, so you can definitely check into some of those. But the biggest thing is, here's my plug, just make sure that if you are renting a car that you budget for your rental car. And the other thing along with this that you need to remember is that Disney does charge parking fees now, both at resorts and the parks. So I know that it might be a little different depending on the park, but it can get pretty steep. So make sure that you budget accordingly. Things to think about too, like you need to not think of parking just once a day, because if you go park at your resort and then you go park at another resort and then you go park at the park, I mean, that's 3 parking fees that you potentially will have to pay. So just make sure you have a really good, kind of know what your itinerary is going to be, so that way you can plan accordingly and make sure you have plenty of money when it comes to budgeting for parking fees. All right, and the other mode of transportation while you're at Disney is going to be shuttles, minivans, Ubers, things like that. We love the minivans. So you guys have heard me talk about minivans, and I have a whole video on that too, so I'll insert the link for that one. But these are going to be great if you have early morning dining reservations, or it's just really busy times of day that the buses are just crazy crowded. Sometimes it's nice to be able to just take that private ride on a minivan or an Uber. back to your resort or to the parks, wherever you're going. Or maybe if you are leaving property, I know that there's the Character Warehouse where it's like the cheaper discounted Disney merchandise. You can't get there with Disney transportation, so you may have to take an Uber to get there. So those are some really good examples on when you do want to make sure you have a little bit of money allotted for that. I know for us, on a typical 5-day trip, we maybe budget about $100 to $200, and we usually don't use all of that, but that at least lets us have enough so that if we wanted to take a couple trips, we can comfortably and not have to worry about like, ooh, this is expensive, because minivans are kind of expensive. With the shuttles, I know we have used this, and I've talked about this in the past, is because of what we were needing to do immediately when we got there, it did not make sense for us to take Magical Express. If you are staying on property, take Magical Express. It's great. But I know for us, we needed to get to a certain place. When we got there, we didn't need to go straight to our resort, and so we ended up doing a rental service with Orlando Transportation by Mike, and that was really nice. It wasn't very expensive. It was a lot cheaper than I thought. They were able to take us exactly where we needed to go. Very easy, but it was one of those things that we definitely had to make sure we budgeted for, because it was kind of just one of those outlier things that you don't totally think of when you're just like airlines and hotel and park tickets, and it's like one of those other weird little things that you have to think of. Oh yeah, we need a little bit of money for those things too. Number 4, this one's kind of, again, one of those weird outlier kind of things, but it seems to fit best in this category, and that is wheelchair, stroller, whatever, those kinds of rentals. Obviously, it just depends on your family and if you're gonna need this or not. Obviously, Mark Allen and I do not, because we do not have children and we are not in wheelchairs, so we don't have to worry about this expense. But if you are somebody that is gonna need these, this is something to think about. With the strollers especially, Disney does have specific guidelines on how big your strollers can be now, so you need to check and make sure that your stroller will fit into these guidelines. If not, you need to look into stroller rentals. I know Disney does have stroller rental options, but then I know that there are some like outside of Disney that you can find too. A really good tip that I heard, and I love this, if you're somebody, you don't need like the big old stroller to hold all the stuff. You just need something that you know your kiddo can't walk the whole day, so you're gonna have to push them. Get those really cheap, just like little, I call them doll strollers because that's just what they remind me, is like growing up, the little toy strollers, but like one of those cheapo little strollers that you can order them on Amazon, have it sent straight to your hotel, use it for your trip, and then at the end of your trip, instead of having to figure out how to get it home, you can pass it off to another family that's just starting their vacation. That way they don't have to buy a stroller. So that's just kind of a cool tip if you don't want to rent the strollers. I know sometimes those can get a little pricey when you're doing it every day, so that's definitely something to think about. Kind of ish, same thing with wheelchairs. You can't really like buy one and then pass it off or whatever, but you do need, if you are going to need a wheelchair or an electric chair, you do need to be thinking about that. All right, so that is it when it comes to travel and airline and getting to Disney and getting around to Disney, all of those expenses. So did I forget anything? If I did, please leave those down in the comments below. I hope this video was helpful for you guys, going just a little bit more in depth about each of these things. Make sure you stay tuned for my future videos, and to do that, make sure you subscribe. That way you're notified when I upload those next ones, when we talk about hotel and tickets and all of the other fun stuff. If you enjoyed this video too, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and we will see you next time. Alrighty guys, bye!